Hello and welcome to the Fit Dads podcast. These are not jockey helmets.
No, they
are cricket helmets. We are at Manchester Cricket Ground, Old Trafford, and we've just interviewed arguably our biggest guest so far, Brad, haven't we?
Yeah, the amazing Kate Cross.
The amazing Kate Cross, England captain. She now plays for Lancs. And we've had a brilliant conversation with someone who's been through a lot actually in her career, hasn't she? Some things that we personally didn't know, some mental health battles and how she got around those, pressures of playing obviously at the elite level of sport in England and for a club, and also some funny stories. So we might have stitched up a little bit with a few of some stories. Basically, for a bit of a backstory, me and Kate went to school together, and I reached out to some of our mutual friends for some backstories and a few things we could discuss that were a little bit more lighthearted. Yeah. So you'll see maybe a side of Kate that you see probably every week if you listen to her podcast. She's got the No Balls podcast with Alex Hartley, and I really enjoyed today.
Yeah, 100%. And look, it's great for us to get out on tour, basically. And look, it's absolutely really kind that people offer to give up their time, because this podcast and this message is massive. We want to inspire parents to be the kids' hero. And if we can almost introduce kids to a new sport, and obviously cricket's a huge sport, obviously, but to get a massive name like Kate, who, quite frankly, was just unbelievable. She was really candid, inspiring, and she really, I suppose, humanised what it is to be a professional athlete.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more with that. Humanised it, and she's so down to earth, isn't she?
Yeah,
unbelievably down to earth for a sports person. And she's also got some great insights for parents who want to try and get their kids into sport. Cricket is a really, really up and coming sport, especially in the women's game now. Good insights from her on that.
Yeah, and for me, I think if you've got a cricket mad son, daughter, if you're cricket mad yourself, honestly, please share this with them, because I think it's a really good insight into the highs and lows of being an athlete. And she touched on something in particular in this episode that really impacted me, that shifting from amateur to professional, and that for me is when my ears really pricked up. Yeah, and I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be incredibly insightful for parents, children. I can't take you seriously with this helmet on now.
No, you know what? I'm actually going. Should we take it off?
There we go. Let's take them off. So for anyone watching on YouTube, there we've just been
wearing our cricket helmets.
We have, which I can hear again now.
Yeah, they do cover your ears though.
They do.
Guys, as well, before we get into today's episode, if you've been enjoying what we've been putting out, we would love for you to subscribe. It will help the podcast more than helps us grow, reaches more audiences, and thank you, and join us for the journey.
Enjoy today, honestly, it's massive. We appreciate your feedback, and if you have enjoyed it, please reach out to Kate, let her know, drop it in the comments if you're on a social media, and she'll really appreciate it.
Yeah, she's good on that stuff, so let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Kate Cross, welcome to the Fit Dads podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We want to pick your brains on all things cricket, your story, your journey into cricket, why you obviously chose that specific, because we did a bit of research on you, and we found that
when you raise your eyebrows like that makes me nervous.
We actually found a really interesting stat. So your dad won the FA Cup, didn't he? In 1980.
1980. He never tells me about it. I've never mentioned
every Christmas.
Yeah. Got the DVD one year.
So I bet he was obviously pushing sports on you, I bet, as a kid, and things like that. But why did you choose cricket over all sports?
Well, if you see me play football, you'll realise that's why I didn't choose football. I'm actually terrible. I'm definitely not my father's daughter there. But I don't think I chose cricket. It's a really cliche, soppy answer, but I actually think it chose me, because I'd never got the opportunity to play at school. Obviously, we went to school together.
If anyone doesn't know, me and Kate went to school, which is obviously how this kind of happened. I reached out to you.
So the boys played cricket over at the boys' school, but the girls played rounders, netball, hockey. We swam, but we never got the opportunity to play cricket. So it was basically because my brother needed a bowler in the back garden when he was a kid, and I was the youngest of three, and I was forced to do all the bowling. So that's how I actually got into it.
I didn't actually know the girls' school didn't do cricket then.
No.
That's interesting.
I actually got invited over to the boys' school to play at one point, but we were technically separate schools, so I wasn't allowed to play for you. But it's changed so much since I was at school, though. Obviously, that was a million years ago. And loads more girls get an opportunity through school and through their clubs and stuff. But yeah, it was because I had an older brother who just needed someone to bully in the back garden, basically.
And I'm sure you did your bit on that. So how have you seen the ladies game evolve since you got into it? I mean, you've been playing now for over 15 years, pretty much professional.
It is, yeah, that's frightening.
So it's a reminder of that.
Yeah, I am one of the senior players now. But, well, I mean, for a start, when I was a kid, you couldn't be a professional cricketer. Like, there wasn't many female sports that you could be professional in. So I never had an aspiration to be a professional sports person. But the changes have been like astronomical, honestly. I couldn't, if you'd have asked me this question 10 years ago, my answer would have been so inaccurate of how I would like envision women's cricket to be in 10 years' time. So we've got professional contracts now. You can play domestically as a professional player. We're obviously still years and years behind where the men's game's at, but we're on a really like quick journey with how far it's progressed and how much it's moved. And other sports have helped us, like the girls winning the Euros back in 2020, was it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Whenever it was. But just
21.
Yeah. But like things like that happening, those real pinnacle moments in female sports are what catapults other people to realise that they're lagging behind. So yeah, I think cricket's journey has literally been like this. It's skyrocketed, and I don't know if you're familiar with the 100, but
yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, you get into play at grounds like this in front of 10,000 people quite regularly, which again, when I was a kid, that was just unheard of. It was always men who played cricket. It was men that were on the telly. You know, there wasn't many female role models out there, and it's just all changed in the last 10 years, basically.
Yeah. And it's exciting for kids. Like, obviously, a lot of our audience is parents and things like that, and we want to encourage people to get their kids into sport and exercise, because that's just influencing the next generation of health, fitness, which obviously our industries. So I guess, how would you encourage kind of parents to get kids into cricket, especially?
So I'm obviously going to be biased and tell everyone to go and watch a cricket game, but I think the 100's a really good place to start. It's really targeted at families. Like, ticket pricing is really realistic for what a family could go and watch. Obviously, you don't want to be spending hundreds of quid going down watching some live sport if that's not something that you can afford. So I think the tickets are priced really reasonably, and it's just fun. You don't really have to understand cricket to come and watch it. The 100 is simplified, so they've tried to make it more just about runs and balls and tried to simplify the game. But yeah, like here there'd be live music. There's always like a fun park at the back that your kids can go and play if they're not interested in the actual cricket. So it's more like it's like a day out.
Ted would like that one.
Yeah, you're going to bring them down.
He would really love that.
But I think just giving kids exposure to sport early is massive, and that's kind of what happened with me. It wasn't that I was ever forced to play sport, but sport was on the telly, or we were playing sport in the back garden. I went down to the cricket club and watched my brother and my uncle play. So, you know, it was just, I was exposed to it, and I then fell into it because of that. And I think if you don't expose kids to it, then they don't understand how there's so many skills to learn from it. It's not just about your physical well-being, but there's teamwork, there's communication, there's leadership, there's loads that you can get from it that you don't necessarily think when you're playing a game of cricket.
Yeah. Even the mental health side of it, it's a hot topic at the moment, and I think, is there a correlation between not as many kids getting into sport and exercise and that side of things as well? You know, it's purpose. It's just something to kind of break the mundaneness. If you're not playing even at like an elite level, sport on a weekend is just such a nice break in the week, I think.
Yeah, I'm always going to agree with that, because I've played a lot of sport throughout my entire life. But I think as well, I think back to my childhood, and I just remember being outdoors all the time. And I'm sure I wasn't. I'm sure there's times when I was playing video games, but it feels like now, obviously, there's so much more for people to be online with that it kind of takes away from the actual physical side of stuff. I don't know whether that's like a reason why everyone's struggling so much with the mental health at the minute. And I guess like there's always the social media side of things that kids have got to deal with now, which we didn't have to when we were their age. So yeah, I just encourage anyone to go and just have a go. There's loads of ways you can do cricket as well. Like there's an all-stars set up now, so I think it's for under fives, which is basically crash. But again, just giving kids the opportunity to try new skills and practice. They don't play with a hard ball or anything. It's like beanbags at that age. But go down to your local cricket club and you get rid of your kid for an hour. It's perfect. It's cool. Like babysitting service.
Love that.
When I see Brad taking notes now.
Literally, before we came here today, I can't even going to tell England captain this, but my little boy Ted, he's 4 years old, and we've got this little lint roller that we keep in the top drawer, and he's always like picking it up, and it does look a little bit like a cricket bat, and I'm like, come on, let's play cricket, and I'm throwing all sorts at him, and he's batting it away.
Oh, perfect.
It's amazing to see, but he loves it. I mean, apart from when it breaks, that's not ideal.
But that's also the good thing about cricket, like you don't actually need the cricket equipment to play it. Like there's loads of stuff that you can use, and I think that's what we're learning in cricket now, is that it doesn't have to look like a test match and be like the really prestigious side of cricket. Like you could use anything. Like I've played games of cricket with a tennis racket and stuff. Like you can do whatever you want, really.
Sure. I come across a great TikTok the other day about some lads who were playing in the back garden, and then all the cameras set up and they were bowling, and it was obviously a really narrow little channel in this garden, but it just looked great and they're having such fun. And, you know, I've definitely preferred other sports over the years, but even watching that, I was like, I fancy giving that a go. That looks really cool, for sure. And
I've learned as I've grown up that, like, golf's a really good example, but I hated golf growing up, and then I gave it a go and I've loved it.
Do you play golf now?
I've played golf now, I'm a golf tragic now as well.
Excellent.
Pick the two worst sports, I think.
Kind of goes hand in hand on the two, doesn't it? It's kind of similar skills.
Very similar. As soon as I went for a lesson, and my tutor was like, you play cricket, don't you? You could just tell from my swing. But again, like, it was just the opportunity. I've never got to play it when I was a kid, and then gave it a go, and I've loved it, and I wish I'd started it earlier.
Wait till you start getting half decent, then that's the worst bit, because you get so frustrated. When you know you're crap, you're all right. So obviously you've got your own podcast as well.
I do.
How did that come around? How did you get into podcasting?
So I did it with my best friend Alex Hartley, who was also a professional cricketer back in the day. She's retired now, but we played cricket for England together, which was obviously, as best mates, it's the dream. You travel in the world, you get into you know, do some amazing things and have some amazing experiences together. And then she lost her England contract. She got fired, and it was obviously naturally a really difficult time for her. And we'd always have banter on social media. We always take the mick out of each other. And one of my best mates just said really randomly off the cuff one day that we should do a podcast, because it was back when they were getting popular, and this was pre-COVID, so it wasn't when they were really, really popular, but he said you should do it. So she'd lost her England contract, and we said, all right, we'll give it a go, try and cheer her up a bit, basically. And also we wanted people to kind of see the real side of sport, because I always think fans of sports, or people who follow sports, always see the best bits. They see the matches, they see the fixtures, they see, 90 minutes on a Saturday at that Old Trafford, not this Old Trafford, and they see the best sides of it. But there's a lot of really difficult sides to being a professional sports person as well. So we wanted to be really real with people, and we wanted it to be an opportunity to talk about mental health as well, because we've both struggled with it. And there was no female professional sports people at the time doing a podcast, so we thought there'd be a little window for us to have an opportunity there. And people loved it, which we couldn't believe, really. But we sat in her living room in her flat with our phone between us on a sofa, and we spoke for about 2 hours, and it was a load of rubbish. And then we had to edit it down to about 30 minutes. And we sent it off to our family members for a little trial to see if they liked it, and they said, yeah, it's all right. So then we went for it.
I think, well, we obviously love podcasting, and we've been doing this for a while now, but there's just something quite natural to it as well. It's kind of nice to be unfiltered. Sometimes just be a little bit careful what you say. Hence, I messaged you before the podcast and said, what can I say that won't get you cancelled? But it's just a great form of and I think that form of content, the longer stuff now, people are happy to absorb. It's not all just short, sharp social media stuff. People want to listen to things that they're really into, and if cricket, and women's cricket especially, is something they really like, and your journeys as cricketers, then they're happy to sit down and watch 2-3 hours of it. So
it's just an insight, isn't it? And that's what we get a lot of feedback, is that people feel like they're sat in our living room with us when we record, because we're just two mates having a chat. And it also has probably opened our eyes as well, but other people's eyes, to the fact that you're just a human being. Like, you've got the same aspirations, the same goals as everyone else. I think everyone, if they could do, would play professional sport. But my dad actually told me when I first signed my first professional contract, he was like, you do realise how hard this is? Because he said if it was easy, everyone would do it. But it's everyone's dream, and it kind of gives people a little window into that world of what it's like, which, back in the 70s, 80s, no one would have had an idea what it was like to be a professional sports person, because you didn't have that access to sports people.
I think social media is a great window to that, but even that, for a lot of people, can be quite selective on what people put out. A podcast, like you said, you can't really fake a podcast. You can't, especially if you're putting out kind of hundreds of episodes yourself, and that's what people buy into. And I think you guys are obviously, we've listened to quite a few. Even on the journey over here, we were catching up. But you guys are just very natural, and it doesn't surprise me at all that someone's obviously listened to your conversation and gone, you guys should be on a podcast, because it is just natural, and that they're the best podcasts, the ones that aren't forced. It's just very chilled and relaxed, and people having a laugh, it's I think maybe you're right, people can see kind of sports people as just this kind of like people on a pedestal, but they are just human beings. You're right.
Especially a podcast with a really good name as well. I absolutely love. Where did that come from? Who decided on that one?
Can I swear on this podcast?
Of course you can.
Okay. So we have to beep ours out because we're on the BBC.
No, we never beep them.
So we were going through names, and we wanted to be called the Full Tossers, and then obviously we're both England. Well, I was an England player at the time, and our media manager was like, do you realise that the word tosser literally means wanker? And we were like, oh no, we didn't really see it that way. So he was like, you cannot call it that. So we settled on no balls. Obviously it's 2 females, so no balls. But it's also a no ball in cricket is like when you overstep the line. So we always try not to overstep the line. We're always kind of toeing the line, but we never overstep it. But
there's always time to get cancelled.
Always time to get. That's my biggest fear actually in life, is getting cancelled.
Is it really?
Yeah, especially with the pod.
I bet. You mentioned before, obviously, you've travelled the world with cricket. It's been amazing in that respect. What would you say is the best place you've travelled? Where would you love to go back to and visit again?
We're so lucky. We get some incredible countries with cricket, but the best has to be New Zealand.
Okay.
Furthest away, so an absolute nightmare to get to, but just it's like England on steroids basically. It's just stunning wherever you go. Great golf courses, great cricket pitches obviously, but it's just a really calm, relaxed way of life, and I just love it over there. It's just such a shame it's so far away from home. It's not like you can nip there on a holiday, but we get to go to, like, every country you go to has got its own unique selling point. Like India is absolute chaos, but they love cricket. It's like a religion over there, so you get treated like royalty. The fans and the people that come and watch in the stadiums are always so loud, and it's also vibrant. So that's got its own very special place in my heart as well. But yeah, we're just so lucky that we get to do this, and I get to like play sport for a living and get to go to these places. It's obviously stuff that like dreams are made of for a lot of people.
How's the women's game in these countries that you visited?
It's different. We're lucky over here that we've been professional since 2014 now, so we've been taken seriously for that amount of time, basically. But a lot of countries aren't, so I don't think the West Indies are fully professional yet. Australia is they're about 5 years ahead of us in terms of their professionalisation. So everywhere kind of varies and everywhere's different, and I think it gets shown in the crowd attendances that we get. So New Zealand's okay, India's brilliant, here's brilliant. Australia's still not great, even though they're kind of 5 years ahead of us in terms of the money and the professionalisation, but they don't kind of have that fan base. So that's quite a strange one actually. So like the Ashes that we have here are always better than the Ashes we have over there, just purely because you get more crowd engagement. Yeah.
Obviously, it's one of the biggest games, isn't it? England versus Australia. You'd expect kind of the Aussies to be as behind it as we are, I guess. And
they've had one of the most successful teams in history. Like for 10 years, they've won everything, and you would think people would want to go and watch that.
Why do you think that is? Are there other sports that are bigger over there?
I think there's probably an element of the weather. So where they get to train in Brisbane, like they don't have a winter. I think they have a 2-month winter, so they're always outdoors. Whereas obviously now we don't get to go outdoors until probably March, April time. So they've got an advantage, I think, with how they can train. But I don't know. They just seem to breed like athletes, and it's I don't know how they do it or why they do it. And we need to know the secret really. But they've been 5 years. They've been paying their players 5 years longer than they've been paying us over here. Okay. So they're just a bit further ahead of us in time, I guess.
Okay. Speaking of internationals, you made your debut as captain recently.
I did, yeah.
It sounds like an unbelievable achievement, this game. Yeah. So talk me through that. How was that experience, kind of captain England?
Yeah. So the reason I captained England was. It's a sad story and a happy story, but I wasn't selected for the T20 World Cup, which just happened out in Dubai. And then we also had a tour to Ireland in the preparation phase of that World Cup. So basically there was 2 squads that needed to be selected. So because I hadn't been picked for the World Cup, I was able to then go on the Ireland trip. And we had a pretty inexperienced team going out there, naturally, because all the senior players were out prepping for the World Cup. And I just got asked by our head coach if I fancied captaining, and I was obviously never going to turn that down.
Wow.
That is stuff that when you're in the back garden, you think you're running in as the England captain. So it was incredible. It was really difficult, purely because we had 11 debutants in 5 games, so it was a lot.
Wow.
And people are naturally looking up to you to help them, which is something that I'd actually pride myself in. I feel like that's the kind of senior player that I'd want to be. But it was great fun. Ireland's a brilliant place to play. We had some great games. and I'm pretty sure I lost every single toss. But it was great. It was a great experience.
And from we'll listen to one of your most recent episodes on the podcast, which was Kate Cross's Barmy Army, where your co-host went over some of the unbelievable accolades that you achieved in that game, which was pretty cool. So you obviously had a bit of a stormer on as your debut.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those days. I don't think anything like that will happen again. But yeah, it was like a career best day with bat and ball, and obviously got to captain, and we won the game. So yeah, I think it was a bit of an anomaly, but still, when you have
maybe it was the hype of it, just like when
possibly,
you're captain, you're going out there and you're like, this is just pretty cool. You've worked your whole career to get to that point, right? So why not go out and enjoy it?
And I think I felt more responsible as well. I think when you're captain, you feel like I said, everyone looks to you to kind of lead the way. So there was naturally, like when I went out to bat, there's not many times I finish a game of cricket with the bat. It's normally with the ball. And I just felt like I really had to take responsibility in that moment and bat the way that we needed to win the game. So it was, I think it probably changed my mentality a little bit as well, and put a bit of good pressure on myself to make sure I did the right things.
Yeah, I'm glad you said good pressure as well, because I think a lot of people don't see it that way. They might see this crushing pressure. And one thing I really like as well, I was just chuckling to myself then, I remembered something you put on your story about, like, I think it was here they are, 32 years old, 33 years old at the end of their career, and it's like, whoa, what do you mean? Like,
as soon as it's happened to me, as soon as I've turned 30, everyone talks to me about retirement, and it's like, you think as a 30-year-old in normal life, you just at a really good phase, but in sport it's like you're decrepit, you're old, you need to get out of there. But yeah, that meme did crack me up.
Yeah, I love seeing stuff like that, because you see it in other sports as well. But no, you seem like you're going strong.
You've done some commentary as well. Do you enjoy the commentary? Is it something you're kind of looking to get into post-career?
I love it. I really love it. I mean, I love talking, as you can probably tell. And I love cricket. I've always been a bit of a cricket tragic, and I'll watch it when it's on the telly all the time, no matter who's playing. And I always think, if you've done a bit of commentary, you really appreciate commentators when you listen to sport. So this is like kind of transferred for me in all sports that I watch, but I can see how it's all put together now, how the show's put together, because I've kind of done it, been on the other side of it myself. And I think commentators have got a really important job, because they tell people's story for them. Some of my best moments on a cricket field, I'm really reliant on the person telling that story through the microphone, and you want people to do it right and do it well. So I think it is like a really special thing to be able to do, and I love watching cricket, and getting paid to talk about it is just an absolute bonus. So I do. I really enjoy it.
Doesn't surprise me. I think you're absolutely right. I think once you've done some commentary, or even podcasting, I listen to a podcast now, and there's other guys, I think they're so good at what they do, because you appreciate how hard it is to talk about kind of things that you're even passionate about, things you enjoy talking about is actually sometimes quite hard. But I think that's one thing we want to talk about was it bounce back ability?
Bounce back ability. I would
determine
to shoehorn in the Ian Dowie word. In terms of yourself, what would you say is your biggest example of bounce back ability in your career?
I mean, I've got a really obvious one. So back in 2016, this is not a secret, by the way, I talk about this all the time, but back in 2016, I really struggled being a professional cricketer. I really struggled and grappled with my hobby becoming my job basically overnight, and it was never kind of anything that I set my sights on, because women's cricket had never been professional. So I'll try and keep it short and brief, but basically a lot of perfectionism crept in with how I trained, how I saw myself, how I wanted to perform, and you just can't be a perfect sports person. It just doesn't exist. You can't have everything go the way you want it to. So I really struggled with the failing side of sport, because I thought I'm being paid to be excellent, and that doesn't include failing. As I've learned, as I've done all my psych work and spoke to some people who've really helped me understand the mental side of the game, is knowing that actually failing is the best side of sport, and that's where you do all your learning. So I basically had a huge mental breakdown in 2016 and walked away from cricket, not knowing if I'd ever come back to it. And it took me 2 years to get an England shirt back on, through selection and stuff. I carried on playing cricket, but I actually didn't know if I'd ever be good enough to play for England again. But since then, so from about 2018 onwards, I've basically had some of the best years of my life from playing cricket, and it's all because of failing, hitting rock bottom, learning about myself, learning how to cope with anxiety and depression and stress, and just having those mechanisms that I put into my life day to day to be able to be a better sports person. And also it's obviously transferred into normal life as well. And but yeah, I think that's probably my most cliche bounce back ability example.
I honestly think that might shock a few people, especially aspiring youngsters, maybe someone who wants to be a cricketer, footballer, rugby player, whatever they want to do, that hobby becoming profession, that must be really surreal. So
I think as well, you just don't take that into consideration when you're a kid, because you just want to play sport all the time. All I wanted to do was play as much cricket as possible all the time, and then as soon as pressure gets put on it, it just completely changes the dynamic of how you see yourself and how you see the sport. And then obviously you get paid and you think you should be really good at it all the time. But what I've learned and what I see a lot in young kids now is, especially those aspiring to play at the next level, is that enjoyment factor just disappears, and they put so much pressure on themselves to train and work hard, and which you've got to do, don't get me wrong, but I just think if you're a coach, your first thing that you should always do for every training session is make sure people enjoy what they're doing, because that's what sport's there to be enjoyed. And if the sports people enjoy it, then the fans are going to enjoy it. So that was a huge learning for me, and I almost wish I'd learned it a little bit earlier. It was kind of when I was about 24, 25 that I was working through all this stuff. So but yeah, I think without that, I wouldn't be sat here today still enjoying my career as a 33-year-old.
It's a lovely story, really nice. And I think that, so you think that where you are now, you had to go through those struggles to kind of get to the person you are and kind of become even the leader you are today. You think it was a big part of your story? Massively.
And I think you could interview thousands of sports people, and I doubt that you'd come across anyone who's not had that part of their career where they've doubted themselves or they've had setbacks, or not many people have that linear line to success. There's that classic image, isn't there, of the wavy line, if that's what success actually looks like. But obviously you can't force failure on anyone, but I do think that when you're a kid, you're just not anticipating that it's going to be hard work. You're just wanting to play sport. So I definitely think if I'd kind of pushed my way through those really difficult times, then I wouldn't have had a career as long as I've had, because I think I would have burnt myself out a lot earlier.
What was it when you were 24, 25? What was it, the part of sport, kind of something that you loved becoming your job? What was it you were struggling to kind of deal with mentally there? What was that?
So it's so cliche, but my upbringing also comes into this, because I think having dad who'd played professional sport and he was relatively well known in the football world in the 70s and 80s. So, when I got down to the real nitty gritty of why I felt how I felt, a lot of it actually came down to being known before I'd done anything to be known for. So I was always David Cross's daughter. Wherever I went, when I played cricket, there was always, that's Dave Cross's daughter. And my brother was a very good cricketer as well in our cricket league, so I was always Bobby Cross's sister. I was never Kate Cross, and that was something that I didn't know I was struggling with it at the time, but when we really unpicked it, it was this expectation that I had to be good at sport, because everyone in my family is good at sport and we're known for sport. And I'm going to be good because I'm the youngest and I've had the most amount of time to get good at sport. So there was a lot of again, it sounds really cliche, because when I got asked, I got the classic question of what was your upbringing like when you were a kid, and I was like, it was perfect. I had a supporting family who loved me and worked really hard for me and took me to all my training, but it was the pressure and expectation that came with that. It's a terrible sob story, isn't it? I had a famous dad, brilliant, but it was something that played on my mind without me knowing about it.
That's interesting. Yeah, and you mentioned obviously the perfectionism that came with that, and just putting yourself to those standards. Did you feel like you could speak to your dad and brother about these things when they were happening, or was it something you kind of just kept quiet for too long?
At the time, no, because that's why it all came to a head in 2016, because I just thought that was part of what being a professional sports person was like, that it was just hard work and you were tired and suck it up, deal with the pressure kind of thing. Kind of crack on. And that was the mentality that dad had as a footballer, that generation of that age of men. It's very much that kind of you just crack on, you don't talk about your feelings, and
proper old school footballers.
Old school. And so that's one of the skills that I've learned, is that it was described to me as you've got a big vat of water, and if you keep putting water in, it's all just going to eventually overflow. But if you just open the tap every now and then and just let a little bit out, then it doesn't ever get to that point where it all overflows, and that's basically what happened in 2016, because I didn't have the skill set to open the tap and talk to anyone. As soon as I did it once, it was then so much easier to do again.
It's opened,
so much easier, and it's actually really opened up conversations between me and my dad about how much he struggled in his career but never had a support network or anyone who was willing to talk about mental health back then. So it's been quite cathartic in a way that we've been able to have those conversations as a father-daughter duo.
Breath of fresh air for you both, I reckon.
Yeah.
A little bit of therapy. I think golfers do exactly the same thing. You get a lot of golfers who, they get caught the yips, don't they?
Yeah.
When they just can't hit the ball right and they're just shanking it all over. Been there a few times. And they get sports psychologists to come on and just go, it's not a physical thing, it's just something in your head that's crept in. It's normally like a self-doubt thing from whatever it is. Sometimes it's deep-rooted from a kid, sometimes it's just something they're dealing with right now in life. But that sports psychologist, I assume it's a sports psychologist you spoke to, I assume they were kind of pivotal in helping you get through this and work through it mentally.
Yeah, and a lot of it for me was learning. He had a really good analogy for me about, it's like having a pilot landing your plane, and he said you can have two pilots in the cockpit, and one of them might be, your really competitive, like almost animalistic side that gets you into the game and probably what you see on the pitch, but you also need someone there that can be your autopilot, that just actually takes the information in, digests it, and then makes decisions, rather than the animalistic side that's always going to kind of go for gold and push. And so that really helped me to know that it's not just one way of, it's like the chimp brain, that kind of side of it.
Chimp paradox.
The chimp paradox. So but I found that really useful to it almost, when you're in a situation, to be able to think of it that way then got me out of the situation in a way, so I could just kind of go through things, and it's really helped me again in normal life, in sports life. It's really helped me.
Yeah, awesome.
You mentioned about like normal life there as well. I appreciate we're talking to England captain, but one of the questions that I really wanted to ask you was, what's your proudest personal achievement as well? Because I know like a lot is made, I guarantee you talk about sport a lot, but you personally, there's Kate Cross the cricketer, but then there's Kate Cross, away from cricket. Like, what would you say your biggest personal achievement is?
It actually probably comes from the podcast. So like I said, me and Al have been always quite loud about mental health, and we've never not done an episode of the podcast because one of us is going through something tough. We've always kind of used it as our therapy in a way. And we, every now and then, we'll get the odd email come through where, it's quite drastic in a way, but you get someone who say that we've saved lives. And that those emails, when we get them, they're just so obviously heart-wrenching, but you realise that what you and your best mate are doing, because you think it's just a bit of a laugh and an outlet for yourself, is actually helping the odd person. And that was when I first spoke about my mental health. That was why I did it, because I thought if it helped one person go to the doctors or speak to their friend or just open up themselves, then it was always going to be worth sharing my story with. So yeah, they're obviously like I said, really quite drastic when you get them, but you hear a story like that and it just kind of takes your breath away and goes, wow, right, it's a bit bigger than just sat recording a podcast, sharing a few jokes.
And it makes you realise actually how many other people out there are going through what you're going through, and we sometimes suffer in silence so that don't speak to people. And then you get those emails and you go, oh, I'm so happy, someone else is getting something from this. And you realise that maybe there's probably a time when you could have done with that, like someone else talking about it. And but it's really nice to be like a lifeline almost for some people.
Yeah, and that's obviously not why we do it. It's a really wonderful side of it. But that what you just said there, like, that happened to me when I really struggled in 2016 and I opened up to my England teammates about it. A couple of girls messaged me going, I've felt the same way for however amount of time, and everyone was kind of suffering themselves and no one was talking to each other. And as soon as we became a bit more vulnerable with each other, we were able to kind of unlock a new level of what teammates look like, and it was a really special thing. And it's actually, it just takes one person to talk about it and then everyone goes, bloody hell, I feel that way as well.
And it's very endearing, like when you open up to someone else, they open up to you, and this bonds form that kind of comes out of nowhere sometimes. And I can't imagine the benefit that has on a sports team when everyone just feels like we've got each other's back a little bit more now, because I know them on a more personal level. Did you see any kind of differences in like potentially results after that kind of incident? I
think what I saw was the level of understanding we all had for each other, in terms of, obviously not necessarily like just the mental side of it, but it's what we all look like under pressure, which when you're in the real crunch moments, obviously you're live on TV, you're in a World Cup final or semi-final, and you have to win those big moments, those pressure moments. We learn really quite like vividly how everyone copes and what they look like. So I could just recognise when someone was stressed, because that's what we talked about in difficult conversations to be having. But obviously you go into defence mode a lot of the time as an athlete, and you're never wrong and you never have made a mistake. But actually in those moments, it's how we were able to communicate with each other and get the best out of each other when it was really difficult. Because the best sports teams are able to do that. And the worst sports teams, you see them crumple when all that happens, and there's arguing and there's people blaming and tantrums. But we were actually able to, it was kind of in the lead up to the 2017 World Cup where we had all these conversations, and it was very heavily led by our head coach at the time, Mark Robinson. But yeah, he was a huge believer on if we could be really vulnerable off the pitch with each other, then it would kind of help on the pitch as well. And you know, that 2017 World Cup, I wasn't part of it, but we won that, and it was an incredible day in England women's cricket.
I'm going to say, if there is, say for example, a PE teacher listening, a cricket coach, football coach, whatever it is, and they really want to bring their team together, get them to bond a little bit more, how would you recommend them maybe starting with that vulnerability and essentially getting the ball rolling with that, if they are so, because like you said, sport's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard if you're not together a lot. I think obviously PE might be a little bit different, but what we did was we really dipped into personality types. So it's something, obviously you need to learn about yourself before you can learn about someone else, but that's how we framed everything that we did. So we do the colours, so like there's the logical people, there's the really fiery people, there's the empathetic people, and then we have the yellows who are like the sunshine, the happy people, basically.
Where were you on that spectrum? I need to know.
I'm very green. I'm a very empathetic person.
Cool.
And my secondary colour is the yellow, so I want people to be happy, and I want harmony, basically. So yeah, obviously we learned all about each other, but then we were able to open up conversations and it didn't mean that anyone had a bad personality type. It was just what their favour was and what they look like when they go into those pressure moments. So it helped me to know that actually she's not just being a bit of a nightmare. That's just how her brain comprehends and works through these really difficult moments. So that's why I think we found it so powerful. But I think there's so much stuff you can do now with like team bonding and, you know, get out on the whitewater rafts and do all that stuff that's loads of fun. Because I think, again, when people are scared and vulnerable, that's when you see their true selves, and I think that's when you can help each other the most.
How does that work at elite level sport, you know, when you're trying to do like these bonding activities and you're like, oh, you know, this could go very south.
Do
you do all those things?
We were up in the Lake District at the start of the summer, and we're doing like rock climbing, and people are petrified of heights and stuff, but then again it brings out, it's almost like your vulnerability isn't shown in cricket, because I think we're able to mask it quite well because we do it often. Whereas when you're up the side of a rock face and you fear that you're going to fall and hurt yourself, that really brings out almost the extreme version of your vulnerability. And it is really difficult. I think the best leaders and the best coaches are the people that are able to bring groups together. And it's obviously not an easy thing to do, because not many people are very good at it, but yeah, well, that's what we've been doing. We've been scaling up mountains and jumping in rivers and all sorts.
I couldn't agree with that more. I always think I'm more football oriented, aren't we? I think us too. And I was met Leicester when they won the league. Yeah. They shouldn't have had any right winning the league. There were so many better teams, but they were just a unit that year, and they really were. And I think if you look at any team that wins the World Cup every year, and across any sport, they're just a unity. Like, there's so much bonding between them, and you feel that in all the games they play, they've got each other's backs, and you know they're the ones that are probably doing things outside of sport together. And you know, I think it's why England football is doing so well now as well, because it's a group of players who aren't so committed to club. They're now more committed to country as well, and they're breaking down those barriers of like, okay, that's the United table over there. We're now kind of going to be, you know, young players who want to do well, actually perform for England, and couldn't agree more there.
I think there's something in having a shared goal as well. So a lot of the success from the 2017 World Cup was, for 4 years we focused on lifting that trophy at Lords, and every person bought into that journey. And I think that I obviously don't know, I wasn't in that dressing room at Leicester, but I imagine that was probably something that they all had a shared goal. Everyone was really clear on what their role looked like and how they contributed towards that. And I think that helps with success and team building as well, because if you feel valued as a member of a team, you're going to do your job better. If you feel like your coach doesn't think you're any good, or your captain doesn't, you know, back you in those crucial moments, then I feel like that's when you get the worst out of players, whereas I think that shared goal and that clarity and communication around roles is really important as well.
Yeah, 100%.
I think sport, fitness, obviously when we go into the gym or we get our clients in, it's really important that we say to them, this is a safe testing ground, really. This is where we stress test you a little bit. And like, you can fail a set, but it's fine. Just recover, go again, as long as you don't blow his shoulder or his knees out, we move forward. And I absolutely love what you said so far, because a key word that's kept cropping up for me from UK is the stress side of things. And it does sound like you've reframed it and almost got yourself a different way of viewing it.
Yeah, I actually think the word safe is really important as well, because I think, like you said, there's failing and getting told you're no good and you're out, but actually if you've got an environment where it's safe to fail and you can express yourself and learn from your mistakes, then that's really important as well, because you don't want people to fear failure, which is what I thought. If I failed, but this was back in 2016, I thought if I failed, I'm going to get dropped, I'm going to lose my contract, I'm not a professional cricketer anymore, I have to go find a job. And that was how I catastrophised everything, and it spiralled. And actually my coach was saying to me, no, I just want you to learn. I want you to learn what works for you or what doesn't work for you. And so having that safety in an environment is vital as well.
Puts an emphasis, I think, on how much talking is a big thing as well, and how many other people are going through the same things, are actually here to support you. And we overthink things so much, don't we? It's just like almost an innate part of being a human being. We overthink every single thing to the nth degree. Some people more than others. But just talking about anything, and you'd be surprised, again, that bonding thing, whether it's with teammates or family members or friends, opening up, it unlocks everything, I think. Yeah,
and I think sharing your fears with people as well is quite a special thing to be able to do, because if I did anything as a cricketer and I was like, I'm really scared that this is going to go wrong, and then your coach says, oh, I felt like that, but I overcame that by doing X, Y, Z. I think that's really important to share that as well.
One of my fears, I think, if I was a cricketer, would be the heckling from the stands. I'll be honest, I imagine it's so, especially if you're fielding.
What's the worst heckle you've had? Have you had anyone that you've been like, right, I'm going to go Eric Cantona a bit?
Do you know what? Some of the worst that I had was from my own teammates. So the lads that I grew up playing cricket with down at Haywood came and watched me when we played here, and they were in the party stand. So you get the famous party stand here, and it's all where it gets a bit boozy. And they were singing the famous chants to me about how you bowl to the left, bowl to the right, Kate Cross's bowling is. I was like, these are my mates. What's going on here? Imagine what my people who don't like me saying about me. Yeah. But it was all in good fun.
That's good, yeah. Nice bit of banter. That's right. Staying on a light-hearted mood, so we did a little bit of research, obviously, and I also spoke to a few of our mutual friends.
Oh, good. Oh, no.
That's before the podcast, and they filmed on a few funny stories, which I'm going to pop in every now and again on this podcast. And the first one is, I want you to tell me about the time that you sang Adele live on TV.
Who have you been talking to? One of my proudest moments, that, actually.
Is it? Okay. When was that?
Oh, gosh, this was 2016, 17. And there is a reason behind it. I don't just back myself, and I'm not a good singer.
Adele's a bold shout.
Yeah.
Bold. So we were doing the launch of what was the Kia Super League at the time. So we had been invited down to the Salford studios for the BBC, and we were out on the big plaza, and it was BBC breakfast. The presenters had come out to do some cricket with us, so we were all in our kit, and I think it was even Charlie from BBC Breakfast was there, and he wanted to have a bowl, so he handed me his microphone and said, can you just hold this for me while I go and have a bowl? So I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So then it all wrapped up, it finished, they moved on to some piece about Brexit, so they'd gone to another studio. And I'm still stood with his microphone, so I was literally banging on it, going, is this on? Can anyone hear me? And then my phone, I started singing Adele. I started singing Hello.
Intrusive thoughts.
As you do. Yeah. I did let my intrusive thoughts win in that moment. So I was singing Hello, can anyone hear me? And my phone started buzzing, so I looked at my phone, and it was this tweet from Eve Jones, who plays cricket here, and she's like, yes, Kate Cross, we can hear you. You're going live on the BBC Breakfast singing Adele.
Brilliant.
It's on the internet. It's worth a watch, because it's quite funny.
I should have actually Googled that before I come on.
It is quite funny. It is worth a watch.
Big screen here.
It's funny.
Properly stitch you up.
Yeah. Who told you that one?
Rage.
Right, remember
She's
that.
my go-to here. Well, should we read a few more off? While we're on stitch up time. The second one was, tell us about the time you pulled a Mooney to the Panini lady in the sixth form common room.
Rachel
This sounds
Morgan.
like a brilliant story.
Oh, for God's sake. Yeah, this was after a classic birdcage rehab night.
Oh, fantastic.
A Wednesday night. We always used to go out on a Wednesday. We were a bit naughty, weren't we?
Do you know, whenever I go through town now, I go through that section, I get really weird, like, flashbacks of just...
PTSD.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's not behind the bush, it was traumatic. But just, like, I was queuing in the night, cold, like, horrible, yeah.
The problem with birdcage was it was £1 vodka Red Bulls, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so it was, I mean, think that now. It's like probably about 10 quid now, isn't it?
Yeah, that sounds dangerous.
Really dangerous. So I really naughtily turned up to school, a bit worse for wear. And I somehow had this massive bruise on my thigh. And I wanted to show the girls that I was like, look at this from last night. Don't know how I've got it. Don't remember it. So as I pulled my leggings down, I actually just pulled everything down. And the panini lady, because do you remember in our common room we used to have the lady there? She did the paninis and she did the pasta king.
In the women's one? Yeah. No, I never went in the women's other
Did
girls. No, never went in the girls' common room. No.
She was called Nikki. We made friends with her because she saved our lives on multiple occasions because she used to hand us these paninis when we were hungover. But yeah, I just mooned her completely in the common room. So Rachel's I've never seen Rachel laugh as much actually. She was like wetting herself just laughing that much.
One of her best stories.
Yeah.
Again, it's trying not to get you cancelled, but to talk about funny stories. There's one here. It was when you had a practice.
A parasite, is that?
Sorry, parasite.
Parasite.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate incident of her neighbour. She's put, I won't give you the spoiler on this one. She has talked about it on her own podcast, so apparently it is PC.
It is out there, yeah. It's a really just one of the worst stories you can have when you've got a love interest, basically.
Okay.
I did not know this would go here today, but here we go.
Apologies.
I went over to India and I didn't know at the time, but I picked up a parasite and I kept being quite ill. It was like prolonged period of being really poorly. I was ill for about 2 months, lost loads of weight. It was actually quite serious, but this is a very funny part of the story. And I was really interested in my neighbour at the time. He just moved in, really fancied him, kept bumping into him in the halls, and I was really trying to let him know that I liked him, but then this parasite kind of got him in the way. So I was in my flat for quite a while. Wasn't going out and doing much because I was so poorly. And then with that, and this was around the time that we were trying to discover what was wrong with me. We didn't actually know it was a parasite. I had to do a lot of samples and send them to the hospitals.
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen him for like a month because I'd been just basically a recluse, hiding away, being a hermit, being poorly. And I came out of my flat and I was going to the hospital with a sample and I had it in my hand. It's in a test tube, obviously, but I didn't have anything to it was just a test tube of shit, basically. And so I put it in a sandwich bag because I was like, I don't want anyone to see that I'm walking around with poo in my hand. So as I've come out of my flat door, I literally bumped into him. When you actually physically bump into someone, I was like, oh my God, the one time that I didn't want to bump into him. And I was obviously really nervous and I didn't handle it very well at all. And then got down to my car. We had a bit of a chat, got down to my car and I think I sent Rach the picture of me holding my own shit in my hand being like, I've just bumped into my neighbour.
Great.
So it was a funny... So he does know now. I did, because we actually did go on a date and it actually went quite well. But yeah, I did tell him that was a really unfortunate moment.
Did you tell him what was in the bag?
Yep.
Did you? Oh, you did? You told him what was in the bag?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
And he's still on a date?
Yeah.
I mean, that guy's a keeper.
I gave him everything, yeah.
Wow. I might have kept that information a little bit more close to heart, to be honest. But
it was on the podcast, though, so I couldn't... so if he wanted to hear it, he could have just listened to the podcast.
As the podcast was going at the time.
Yeah, because me and Al do these moments where it's what's been going on this week, and I was like, Al, I have to tell you about this because it's just the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But yeah, I actually didn't think I'd talk about my own poo on this podcast too, but there we are.
Once that story's out there, I feel like it just keeps coming back. It's the worst ones that keep coming back.
Yeah.
In fact, this needs to be our strapline now. Fit Dad's podcast, humanising athletes.
There it is,
There we go. This is what we do.
Yeah.
I suppose I want to go a little bit deeper and philosophical with it now, because you spoke about Kate bowling in the garden for your family. If you could go back and talk to, let's say, 9 or 10 years old, okay, is there anything that you'd say to her? Is there anything that you'd tell her to change or to do more of? What would you say to her?
Leave her flat 5 minutes later that day. No, I'm joking. I think I wouldn't change much. I think you kind of get asked that question quite a lot, if you've got any regrets or anything. But my only thing that I wish I did earlier was... Not that I didn't work hard, but I wish I'd worked a bit harder. I think when I got to about 25, 26, the fitness side of cricket really came into it. And a lot of people who don't watch cricket, the perception is that you don't have to be that fit, and it's a bit of a clubby sport kind of thing. But you have to be quite physical now, especially with the calendar and how much we train. And it probably took me to be about 25, 26 to really appreciate that. And I just wish I'd done it earlier. I wish I'd kind of been that kid that loved running and, just worked a little bit harder on that side of it. And I guess the classic one is just wish that I'd opened up a bit sooner about how I was feeling, because when I did eventually open up, it was kind of too late, and it actually meant that I lost out on the opportunity to be part of that 2017 World Cup. And that was something that I still argue with myself now. Like, if I'd have just carried on, or if I'd had that conversation sooner, then there could have been an opportunity where I was part of that squad. And they're the moments in sport that you really do aspire to like lift a home World Cup at Lords in front of 25,000 people is, the stuff that you write your book about eventually when you finish playing. So I missed out on that, and I just wish I'd had the opportunity, or given myself the opportunity to do all the mental health side of it a bit earlier, rather than just thinking that I could cope with it when I didn't have the tools to be able to.
It's nice, but I also think as well, we do things in our own way. We have to make those mistakes, and sometimes it takes something as big as missing out on that to appreciate that actually that was just as important for me.
Yeah,
it was. You opening up and talking about kind of how you felt was equally as important, I would say. If that had never happened, where would you be now? You might have won that, but where would you be from a mental standpoint?
Yeah, and I do. That's my ultra argument when I'm annoyed at myself for missing out on it and opening up, is that your health always comes first. Like, no matter what it is, whatever level of sport you play, your health always comes first. So I'm obviously really proud of myself for going through all that. But yeah, I think I just wish I'd not tried to cope with it for as long as I did, because like I said, then that vat of water just was overflowing and I didn't know how to stop it. But yeah, I think I wouldn't be here today with a smile on my face enjoying my sport as much as I still am if I hadn't gone through that. So you're right, things happen for a reason. I'm a big believer in that. Big believer in like how things happen, your path's kind of set out for you.
Yeah, amazing. Sure. And as much as we are keen to reflect back and learn from your lessons, we also want to project forward as well. So what does the future hold for Kate Cross?
So the very immediate future is a couple of tours this winter. So we've got South Africa and Australia. So we're going to try and regain our ashes over there just after Christmas. And then I'm going to India at the back end of the winter as well. So avoiding all of the horrible weather here. So it's the best part about being a cricketer is you follow the sun around the world every year. But in terms of like how long I'm going to play for, I don't know. Everyone asks you that as soon as you turn 30. But I still feel like I'm as fit as I've ever been. I feel like I'm enjoying it as much as I ever have. I still feel like I've got a lot to give the game, and I've not put a time limit on that yet. So I'm just going to keep going until I stop enjoying it. I think, or my body gives up, one or the other. And then I want to stay in it. I want to stay in cricket or in sport, because I feel like my journey's kind of been one that there's been a lot of barriers that I didn't know I was breaking down at the time. But you look back, I was the first woman to do a few things here at the club, for example, like being on the academy. There was never been a girl part of the academy before I did it. And I don't ever want girls or kids to have barriers themselves. So I think if I can stay in the game somehow and influence that, then I will try to. But who knows, it might be golf. I might be trying my hand at golf in the next 5 years.
Yeah, we'll see on the PGA Tour. WPGA Tour. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. But I think obviously you were, from the things you've been through, it really looks like you were just made for elite sport. I think from obviously your upbringing to all the things you overcome. If anyone wants to kind of aspire to play at that elite level, what would be the advice you give to them? What's the difference between kind of playing, for your local club to then going to, obviously the elite side of things?
I think two things. So I've never been the most skilled player, but I've worked really hard at what I am good at. So it was probably around the time of 25, 26, I tried to make one thing my super strength. Instead of trying to be brilliant at everything, I thought if I can be excellent at one thing. So I worked really hard on being the most accurate bowler that I could be. And that stood me in quite good stead for it keeps me out of a lot of 2020 squads, because that's a kind of different side of the game. But in terms of the longer format, it keeps me in those teams. So I worked really hard on that. And the other thing is that you have to be willing to sacrifice. I've missed birthdays, I've missed weddings, I've missed hen-dos with my mates, I've missed like my niece's first Christmas because I've been away. So it's hard. That's the side that maybe people don't think about when they see people playing sport, but you do miss out on quite a lot of stuff. I didn't go to my school prom because I had a cricket game the next day. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so missed the GCSE. I went to our sixth form one, but I missed the GCSE one. So just things like that, and I had to be comfortable with having. It helped having friends who understood. No one ever kind of made me feel left out because of it. And even now, the set of friends that I've got are brilliant. They understand that I might miss the January birthdays party or whatever, but I think that's helped me actually. But yeah, you've got to be willing to kind of take away to be able to give a little bit. So they'd probably be my 2 bits of advice, I think.
Yeah, and the sacrifice one's really important. We were talking actually about football, as we always do before we came onto the show, and just like kind of again what those guys go through in terms of sacrifice and that, Boxing Day games, missing Christmases, things like that. You've really got to commit yourself fully to the sport and accept that everything else is secondary, because sometimes it can be a smaller career as well.
Yeah.
To a certain degree, you show no signs of slowing down, but at some point the wheels will slow, the body will slow down. But also great that you've got this avenue into other areas, I think, in terms of commentary and punditry and stuff like that. Yeah,
I think I learnt that back in 2016 because I had a degree from uni, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with that. I studied psychology, but I wanted to have something to be comfortable to fall back on if the worst case scenario happened. And I think I wasn't equipped with that in 2016, so I felt like if I lost cricket, I lost everything. Whereas now I feel like if the worst case happens tomorrow and I can't play another game of cricket again, I'm really comfortable that I've got brilliant avenues to go down. And I think that gave me a level of comfort almost, that the worst case scenario is no longer the worst case scenario.
Was that one of your kind of maybe fears and anxieties around
massively.
What happens post career, like what am I actually going to do kind of thing?
And I always know you've got enough a big enough support network around you to help you if the worst case happened, but my fear was that cricket would get taken away from me. And ironically I was leading myself down a path where cricket was going to get taken away from me because I wasn't getting any better because I was too scared to fail. So there was like this huge vicious cycle going on, but as soon as I then took a bit of a step away and realised there's more to life than just playing cricket, then it kind of all got a little bit easier. But it definitely again took for me to pull myself away from it and see the bigger picture to realise that I needed to probably put that in place so that I didn't feel that the fall would be as big if it did happen.
Depends how much you believe in like manifesting, and that's can be a bit hippy dippy that, but sometimes I do believe that you attract the things that you're generally thinking about on a daily basis, and if that inner self talk's quite negative, sometimes you catastrophize things and you bring those kind of things towards you, whereas sometimes it's a spiral. You need someone to break that spiral of thoughts and someone to come in and redirect that thinking. And again, I think you've obviously seen some great people in that respect.
And that's where I thought I could do that myself, but that's what professionals are there for, and that's why they're there to help, and it's to help guide and reframe. And that was something that I worked really hard on, but again, like at 33, 7 years after all this happened, I'm still thinking about all that stuff that I learned that time ago. So it's so important.
Let's say that you didn't go down the avenue of sport at all. You've got obviously a degree in psychology. What would you be doing right now, do you reckon, if you hadn't gone down the cricket avenue? So
when I finished uni and I was applying for postgrad schemes, I actually applied for one at the prison service.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I love the criminal side of psychology and forensic side. God knows what I'd have been doing in a prison, but maybe something like that. Maybe
on the right side of the bar, so
yeah, definitely. But yeah, maybe something like that. I think that's crime's always kind of interested me. So I'm a classic Netflix murder documentary girl.
My missus is the same. I go onto Netflix, it's all just like crimes and drug dealing, stuff like that.
But I actually think I'm fascinated in people, and I always find it really interesting how my brain can see something very differently to someone else's brain. And obviously with criminals, it's like the complete, like, how has anyone done something so drastic that they're in prison and thought it was okay? So I think it's more the people side of it that I'm fascinated by, and I think that's why I studied psychology.
Amazing.
What's your go-to Netflix at the moment? What, anything you're watching? Anything series?
I'm really behind actually, so I feel like I'm about 6 months behind everyone, and everything that came out in February I'm just finishing now. But I just watched One Day, I binged it in about a day.
I've seen that. What's that one about?
Oh, it's a book. It's a book that came out, and I hadn't read the book actually. I normally always read the books before I watch anything, and I just put it on the other day and binged it in a day, and I was bawling my eyes out. It's a classic love story, but bawling my eyes out. So I was a bit sad actually.
I thought you were going to give me some kind of really like evil, like Dharma style one there.
I did watch the Menendez brothers one. That was that was good.
We're about kind of 3/4 of the way through that. But that's
mad.
They're psychopaths, aren't they?
It's
basically.
mad, isn't it? Yeah. But that's what again. Like, is their brain so different to mine?
Mindset, interesting. I think as humans we're drawn to things that are very extreme, and like in a weird way I think sometimes as well, as extreme as that is, you watch those things and in your own mind you go, I can see how that would happen. Like you push the right buttons, piss a few people off. I can go down that route. And
you're also thinking, I'm normal. I didn't think I was normal, but I've seen those two and now I know I'm normal.
There's a lot of that goes on.
Amazing. Kate, I'm super aware of your time. You've been extremely generous so far. Absolutely. Have you got any final questions for Kate? Right?
Just anything I guess you want to talk about, anything, any topics of conversation around kind of sport, or obviously we've covered mental health quite a lot as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm conscious that this is a podcast for parents and things like that. I'm not a parent,
about all kind of shit. Don't worry. Yeah.
Do you have anything that that people get in touch with quite regularly around?
For me, it was more, I suppose, getting kids involved in sport as well. And for me, I don't know, like there's cricket clubs everywhere, but I never really hear cricket, especially just in my group of friends or people who I come in contact with. It's always football, it's always rugby, and I'm like, I would have loved to have been introduced to cricket as a kid, but for some reason it just never crossed my path. So if someone does potentially want to get involved in cricket, or if there is, I don't know, at what age potentially would you say, listen, this is prime age to start just exploring it or specialising in it? Or
I think just the younger the better, because I think it's like a hand-eye coordination, obviously, skill set, but for me, like when I grew up, I met some brilliant people. I met some lads who, because I was the only girl playing in the boys team down at Haywood, but that group of lads like really accepted me as a cricketer. They never saw me as a girl, they just saw me as a cricketer, and I just think that actually set up what my career looked like, because you would get sexist remarks whenever you played, when you were the only girl playing, but they really had my back, and I think that kind of made me feel like cricket was a game for me, because I had people who looked after me. So I think I don't think age matters. Like, people email the podcast and they're trying it at 30 or 40, and there's loads of there's Prosecco cricket on a Friday night for the ladies, and there's all sorts of ways of doing
cricket,
it. Yeah,
really? Okay, that
Friday night. Yeah, so everyone
just mad kind of cricket.
Yeah, everyone just has a bit of a.
Is it just for ladies?
No, you can go down. We'll get you down. But yeah, there's loads of different ways of doing cricket now. So I think that's what's like really good about the sport. I don't know enough about rugby and football to know if there are different ways that you can get different dynamics and demographics of people involved, but I guess the one thing I would want to talk about with, if this is a parent podcast, is like you often see the pushy parent, and I think my bit of advice, even though I had a dad who loved sport and would have loved me to get into sport, he never forced me. Whatever my interest would have been, he would have really supported that, and I think that's really important, especially if you think your child's got the potential to be an elite sports person. It's just, they've got to figure it out themselves. If I'd have got pushed, I'm pretty sure I would have resisted that a lot sooner. So yeah, I think just my advice to parents would just be make sure the kids are enjoying it as much as possible, because like I said, sport is there to be enjoyed.
Brilliant advice, great advice. And we've all been on those sports teams where there's that one parent dad on the side, and you're like,
that dad,
I'm glad that's not my dad.
Yeah.
Thankfully, my dad obviously it was never like that as well. But I think brilliant advice. And it's often more apparent, I think, in kids who are actually quite good, because their parents realise that and they go, we could do something here, and then you get a little bit too pushy and into it. And
it often comes from a good place, doesn't it?
Of course, always.
And very, very often I see a lot of parents who it's actually their dream that they're wanting their kid to live out, so because they didn't make it as a professional footballer, they want their kid to do it or whatever. But they've just got to do the journey at their own rate, because everyone's different, like you said earlier.
Yeah, great advice.
I say it a lot. I just want to see my son happy. I think the same with
absolutely
as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've started posting videos now of like doing squats and deadlifts in the gym and stuff. And she's only like lifting 2 kilos, but I love it. I love getting her into it from that early age, and we're really, really, it's one of our big ethoses around obviously starting the podcast and giving advice to parents is, we want to do that with our own kids. We want to push like sports and have them comfortable in that environment, and just give them the really basic skills. Like at the ages our kids are at 2 and 4, it's just very simple things: coordination, enjoyment, balance. Like these things, you don't need a really kind of technical sport behind you to learn those things. It can be quite soft and playful, and we want to really encourage that.
And I imagine it's a really good time to bond as well, like you sharing something with your kids that you love as well, and they're seeing your passion, so they see what passion looks like and what it's all about.
But I totally get like kind of pushy parent thing, because Harlow, she's always been, whenever I say let's do some squats, she's got squats and hands up, and I did it this week and she went, no squats, Daddy. And I went, like, come on, where's the enthusiasm for squats go? Right, that's it, double session next week. Anything else for Kate?
No, again, just to really thank you for your time.
No problem, thanks for coming over.
Kate, honestly, thank you so much for today. Really nice of you, and good luck this year with all the endeavours.
Thank you.
And we'll be keeping watch, won't we?
Yeah, I'll be listening to the podcast now.
Okay. Well, do you know what? First thing Rach said was, if you ask those questions, send it to me, so I'll send it to Rach as well.
She just wanted a name drop.
Probably, yeah, she's happy now. Kate, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.